we feel that man is moving from within outward through the projection from himself of symbolic forms which bear witness to the geometrical proportions of his own psychic life. Therefore, the individual in his dreams, or in his waking dreams, in his instinctive likes and dislikes, in the decisions and choices which he makes, in the person he may choose to marry, in his attitude towards life and his world, in all these things, the individual is drawing something from himself, is causing symbolic forms and shadows to come to the surface from the deep sources and fountains of his own existence. Now, the difference between this and the great rituals of the Mother of the Gods may be worthy of our consideration. For in these rituals, the qualities with which man is most concerned are lured from himself by presentation of symbol to him, and not merely released through him in a heterogeneous collection of dissonant elements. In other words, if these symbolic forms which come from man represent various impersonations of his instincts, then these instincts have potential forms or symbolical equivalents. And if the most divine of these instincts are pictured to man, he will experience them and find that these pictures will call upon his own inner remembrances and release these symbolic patterns from within himself. In the common ordinary life of man, most of his environmental circumstances do not directly release, because they are in themselves asymmetrical. They are in themselves compromises, materialistic emphases, and the individual is not in the presence of sheer beauty, nor is he in the presence of sheer goodness, as far as man is capable of contriving these terms or the elements and principles for which they stand. So the neophyte or the candidate for initiation enters the secret house. He isolates himself from the world. He enters into another kind of world, which might be likened in itself to his own inner life. He discovers, like the Melchizedek mystery of old, that in the rebirth of his own inner life he must be his own father and his own mother. He enters into these rites, into an unworldly state of detachment from all material things, from all normal or materialistic instincts and appetites. And here, in an atmosphere of the most detached sanctity, in an atmosphere itself redundant with beauty, full of love and nobility, always in gentleness, peace, and dignity, the neophyte advances toward the pageantries by which he is supposed to be so profoundly touched. And gradually the great spectacles open before him, and he beholds not the gods or their strange ways and symbols, but he beholds a series of pictures which are the reflections of his own heart and mind. Each of the things that happen breaks silences within himself and cause him to become articulate of ideals and principles and beliefs. As this rushing unfoldment takes him, he may then very well pass into a state of enthusiasm, which is from entheus, meaning in God. He may find himself suddenly possessed by powers beyond his comprehension, moved by forces that he cannot resist, until it seems that an internal world bursts through him and around him. And he finds himself like Apotheosis, standing at midnight upon the threshold of Persephone, with the great, radiant, and glorious sun of noon shining under his feet. He beholds himself transported from one sphere or world to another. He enters into the abode of the dead being the dark part of himself. He there faces all of the pressures, evils, and symbolic fantasies of his own psyche. He is victorious over darkness and evil. He is restored again to light. He remains 3 days in the underworld, or 3 degrees. Then he is resurrected and brought into the presence of the Hierophant of the Mysteries, the Grand Master in his robes of blue and gold. And here he is crowned and coronated as a master of the inner life. And he is presented with the symbols and powers of his new authority. But long before these things have happened, as Apotheosis points out, the soul itself has become so completely enamored of the transcendental beauty of the divine that it is no longer scarcely to be considered in this world at all. It moves strangely as in a sleep of waking. It beholds all things in new order and relationship. It beholds gradually the breaking open of the walls of the temple until, as one of the initiates says, all vanished except time and space and heaven and earth, and the whole world became the eternal temple. All these things were experiences strangely and wonderfully psychologically released by the great pageantry of the rites. And because of the tremendous power of these rites, with their mantrams, with their songs, with their sacred circumambulations, with the mystic dances of the muses and the graces, and all the strange parts of these stories, that which finally ended brought with it a complete and tremendous apotheistic change within the consciousness of the neophyte. He became the initiate, not because his mind had accepted the instruction, not because simply his emotions had been purified or cleansed, for these cathartic disciplines came first. He was an initiate because of a complete transcendent experience, an experience which could never be assailed by his own reason, which could never be denied by his own mind, because he had been there, because this had happened to him, and because in the course of the great ritual he had come face to face with the gods themselves. Now, were these gods truly masked priests? They may have been. But also every mask, every robe, every symbol was chosen with a strange and wonderful skill. The gods the man saw may have been masked priests, but the gods that came to him from within himself were not. For these various shadows, man-made, even with the greatest solemnity and care, became in themselves ensouled. And these images of divine things, as Plotinus calls them, become strange magical agents, drawing to themselves the real principles for which they stand, so that that which is in the likeness of the God is never entirely separate from the God, because the believer can experience the God in the likeness. And that which comes to the person who understands or accepts the mystery is not the symbol, but the substance or energy which is released through the symbol. Having received the rite, the initiate then goes forth upon the porch of the temple, and he finds that the citizens of the villages around and of the towns have all gathered for the wonderful ceremony of receiving him back again into the world of the objectively living, where he has gone down into the great mystery. He has returned to the womb of eternity. He has been born again of the great mother, and he has come forth out of his alma mater, for the form is preserved even in our present university system, although the meaning is lost. He comes forth out of the mother of learning, but he has not been taught by the mind alone. He has been taught by the soul in a mystery. And he is hailed on the pillars, as he stands between the pillars of the porch, he is hailed as one twice born, the reborn one. He is then proclaimed not any longer as a wise man or a student or a great teacher or something of that kind. The initiate of the mysteries had a strange and unique place which has never been filled since the decay and decline of that system. He was a being like God. The king of the country could not be seated in his presence without his permission. Every door was open to him. No man would dare to deny him anything that he asked, but for the strangeness of thought, of circumstance, he never asked for anything. He was strangely and completely aloof, and yet he was in this world but not of it. He labored, he served, he taught, he worked, and when the fullness of his years were done, he went to sleep in the earth like his brothers who had not been initiated. But he lived forever in a state of immortality, because within himself he knew that he could not die. He had returned to the gate of death and had come back again. He had passed through this complete internal release of the psychic nature of his own soul. And as such, he was a Mahatma, a great soul in the Indian language. And this great, our illumined soul, as Julianus tells us, then assumes the great and glorious hymn to the Mother of Mysteries, because she is the custodian, the faithful guardian, the forever keeping of all that is true and beautiful and noble and good. She is the soul itself, the beloved of all nations, the desire of all peoples. Now, the temple being, as it was, a peculiar emblem of the soul, the rise of the mysteries were represented in 2 degrees or stages. Whereas the body of man carries within itself the sanctum sanctorum, or the secret part of the heart, so within the heart of man the temple of the mysteries is built. And within man's own psychic life, certain things must happen before the temple, which is everlasting, can be built. Here we have much symbolism which can find easy parallel in the story of the tabernacle in the wilderness and the building of Solomon's temple. All these rites and ceremonies have the same meaning. But the house that is built without the sound of hammers or the voice of workmen, eternal in the heavens, is of course the everlasting house of the soul, the mysterious temple, the mysterious body of the great psychic mother, Sophia Asimov, the great mother of the Gnosis. So Sophia, or the Virgin of Wisdom, is the house that can never be profaned, the mystery whose veil cannot be lifted, but who waits forever for the return of her sons, like the patient Penelope weaves forever the mysterious fabric of destiny.